The massive alien warship Sovereign's Wrath floated silently in the cold darkness of space. Its black hull stretched for miles, covered in glowing blue lines that pulsed like a heartbeat. On the bridge, Commander Velthor stood with his 6 arms crossed, watching the destruction below through the giant window. The planet Nerion was burning. What had once been a beautiful world covered in purple oceans and golden cities was now nothing but smoke and fire. The collective's energy weapons had turned the surface into melted glass in just 3 hours. "Status report," Velthar commanded, his voice echoing through the bridge. His species looked like giant insects, with hard shells and multiple eyes that could see in all directions at once. "All resistance eliminated, sir," reported his aide, clicking his sharp mandibles together. "The surviving population has been captured and sent to the processing centers. Another world belongs to the collective." Velthar nodded, feeling satisfied. This was how things always went. The Zephyrian Collective had been conquering worlds for over 3,000 years. They had the best technology in the galaxy, energy shields that could stop any attack, weapons that could destroy entire continents, and ships that could travel faster than light itself. No one could stand against them. No one even tried anymore. The bridge was filled with officers from different alien species, all part of the collective. There were the tall, gray-skinned Vorthok with their large black eyes. The plant-like Solani swayed gently as they worked at their stations, their leaves rustling softly. The rock-like Chromax stood perfectly still, their stone bodies barely moving as they operated the ship's systems. All of them had once been conquered by the collective. Now they served willingly, knowing that resistance was impossible. Interrupted the navigation officer, a young Vorthok named Zilanax. "Our deep space scouts have found something interesting." Velthar turned his attention to the holographic display that appeared in the center of the bridge. It showed a small yellow star surrounded by several planets. One of them was blue and green, clearly covered in water and land. "What makes this system special?" Velthar asked. "The third planet shows signs of intelligent life," Zilanax explained. "Single dominant species, billions of individuals. They have cities, agriculture, and basic technology." Velthar's multiple eyes focused on the planet. It looked peaceful, almost beautiful. "Threat assessment. Minimal, sir. They still use chemical rockets to reach space. Their weapons appear to be simple, kinetic projectiles, metal bullets fired by explosive powder. Very primitive. They don't even have faster-than-light travel yet." The other officers on the bridge began to chuckle. Chemical rockets? Kinetic weapons? These creatures were still in the Stone Age, compared to the collective's technology.
"How?"
"Long since they discovered spaceflight?" Velthor asked. "Approximately 100 of their years, sir. They've barely left their own world. A few small stations around their planet, nothing more." Velthar felt almost disappointed. After the challenging conquest of the Nethys system last year, he had hoped for something more interesting. The Nethys had at least possessed basic energy weapons and deflector shields. This new species seemed to have nothing. "What do they call themselves?" he asked. "According to our translation protocols, they call themselves humans, sir. Their world is called Earth." "Humans," Velthor repeated the word slowly. "And they've made no attempt to contact other worlds." "None, sir.
How?"
They seem completely unaware that other intelligent species exist. They're sending out radio signals, but they're clearly not expecting an answer." Velthar walked to the edge of the bridge, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, this species called humans was going about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. "How many ships should we assign to this conquest?" asked his aide. Velthar thought for a moment. The collective had strict protocols for planetary subjugation. Major threats required full battle fleets with hundreds of ships. Moderate threats needed battle groups of 50 vessels. Minor threats could be handled by patrol squadrons. "What's the smallest force we've ever used for a planetary conquest?" he asked. 12 ships, sir? That was for the Kelthani system. They had basic spaceflight, but no weapons technology. And these humans are even more primitive than the Kelthani. Much more primitive, sir. Velthar made his decision. Assign a standard subjugation fleet. 20 ships should be more than enough. We'll make this quick and clean. The aide began entering commands into his console. Should we send the advanced scouts first, sir? Yes, standard protocol. Let them establish a forward base and begin preliminary assessments. I want to know everything about these humans before we arrive. As the orders were transmitted across the collective's communication network, Velthar returned to his command. Chair. Another conquest. Another world added to the collective's empire. The humans would probably surrender without a fight, just like most primitive species did when they saw the collective's power far across the galaxy. On the small blue world called Earth, Admiral Lee Minho was sitting in a secure underground facility reading reports from the deep space monitoring stations. The screens around him showed strange signals detected at the edge of the solar system. He reached for his secure communication device and activated the emergency protocol. This is Admiral Lee. Unknown contacts detected. Initiate protocol, Janus. Immediately, all units to standby positions. The waiting was finally over. 3 weeks after the first alien signals were detected, Collective's advance fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each vessel was 10 times larger than anything humans had ever built. Commander Velthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the primitive solar system spread out before him. The third planet looked exactly as the scouts had described: blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling in the atmosphere. It was actually quite beautiful, though that beauty would not last long. Begin scanning the planet, he ordered. His crew, I want to know everything about these humans. The ship's sensors swept across Earth, detecting cities, roads, the crude metal structures the humans used for their space program. Everything looked exactly as primitive as expected. Sir, reported his communications officer. We're detecting radio transmissions from the planet. They seem to be trying to contact us. Velthor was mildly surprised. Most primitive species either tried to hide or immediately attacked when the collective arrived. Very few attempted communication. Put it through the translation matrix, he commanded. The bridge filled with a crackling human voice speaking in their native language. The translation system quickly converted the words, "Unknown vessels. This is Earth Defense Command. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Elthor smiled with his sharp teeth. Earth Defense Command, how amusing. These creatures thought they could defend their world with chemical rockets and metal bullets. Open a channel, he ordered. The main screen activated, showing Velthor's imposing figure to the humans below. His 6 arms, multiple eyes, and armored carapace would surely terrify these soft-skinned creatures. Primitive inhabitants of the Third World, he began, his voice cold and commanding. You will submit to the authority of the Zephyrian Collective. Your planet and all its resources now belong to us. Resistance will result in planetary sterilization. There was a long pause. Then, to Velthor's surprise, a human voice responded. Not with defiance or panic, but with what sounded like fear and desperation. Please, we don't want to fight. We're just trying to survive here. Can we talk about this? Maybe meet somewhere neutral. The voice belonged to Admiral Park So-young, though Velthar had no way of knowing that. She was sitting in the command center of what appeared to be a simple mining vessel near Earth's asteroid belt, carefully controlling her tone to sound frightened and weak. You wish to negotiate? Velthar asked, genuinely curious. Most species either surrendered immediately or fought to the death. This middle ground was unusual. Yes, please. We have families, children. We don't want anyone to get hurt. Could we meet on our moon? It's neutral ground. Velthar Sade looked puzzled, so they're being remarkably compliant, almost too easy. Fear makes creatures predictable. Velthar replied, Very well, humans. We will establish a base on your satellite. We'll send representatives to discuss terms of surrender. What the collective didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment for months, hidden deep beneath the Colorado mountains. Dr. Yoon Hejin had been working around the clock with her team of linguists and computer specialists. They had been monitoring alien communications since the first scout ships arrived, slowly cracking the collective's language and learning their tactical procedures. Admiral Park is doing perfectly, Dr. Yoon reported to Admiral Lee Minho. They're buying our frightened primitive act completely. Lee Minho nodded as he watched the tactical displays. The collective ships were positioning themselves exactly where the computer models had predicted they would. Their arrogance was making them predictable. What about their technology? He asked. Energy weapons, plasma shields, faster-than-light drives, Dr. Yoon replied. Exactly what we expected. But sir, they're also showing us their weaknesses. Their shields are designed to deflect energy attacks, not kinetic impacts. And their ship formations are optimized for fighting other energy weapon users. Perfect, Lee Minho said quietly. Continue monitoring their communications. I want to know everything they're planning. On the lunar surface, the collective began constructing their forward base. Massive alien machines carved tunnels into the moon's gray rock, installing equipment and weapons. The humans were allowed to send a small delegation to the base, scientists and diplomats who appeared nervous and overwhelmed by the alien technology. Colonel Joy Minseok was among the human delegates, though he played the role of a frightened scientist perfectly. As he walked through the alien base, he memorized every detail: the layout, the security systems, the weapons placement. Everything was being recorded by hidden cameras and transmitted back to Earth. Your technology is incredible, he told the alien guards, his voice full of fake admiration. We could never build anything like this. The aliens preened with pride, showing off their advanced systems. They never suspected that the primitive human was actually a special forces colonel, cataloging every weakness he could find. Meanwhile, in space, Admiral Park So-young continued her performance. Her ship, the Harmony, appeared to be nothing more than a civilian cargo vessel conducting routine mining operations. The collective's sensors showed it had no weapons, no shields, no advanced technology whatsoever. They had no idea that hidden beneath the ship's innocent exterior lay one of humanity's most advanced warships. Its true capabilities completely masked by carefully designed camouflage. Sir Park So-young's communications officer whispered, "We're receiving coded transmissions from Earth. The main fleet is moving into position." Park So-young smiled grimly. The collective thought they were dealing with a backward species that would surrender without a fight. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. 3 weeks after establishing their lunar base, the collective's main invasion fleet arrived in Earth's solar system. The sight was terrifying. Over 200 massive warships emerging from hyperspace, their dark hulls bristling with weapon ports and glowing energy conduits. Each ship was a masterpiece of destruction, capable of reducing entire continents to ash. Commander Velthor stood on the bridge of the Sovereign's Wrath, watching his fleet take position around the small blue planet. His multiple eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he studied the tactical displays. The humans had made no attempt to flee or hide. Their primitive space stations remained in orbit, and their crude radio transmissions continued as if nothing had changed. "Deploy standard formation," he ordered his crew. "I want every ship in optimal firing position." The collective fleet spread out in a perfect sphere around Earth, each vessel maintaining precise distances from the others. It was a formation they had used successfully for centuries, designed to provide maximum firepower, while allowing their energy shields to overlap and protect each other, Sir reported his weapons officer. "All ships are in position. Energy weapons charged and ready." Velthar nodded approvingly. The formation was textbook perfect. No enemy had ever broken through it. Hidden throughout the solar system, humanity's true fleet waited in absolute silence. Captain Seo Junho commanded the stealth vessel's Silent Thunder, its hull carefully designed to look like a piece of space debris. For weeks, his ship had drifted among the asteroids, its crew living on emergency rations and recycled air to maintain the illusion. "Sir," whispered his sensor operator, "collective ships are taking standard battle formation. All targets locked. Hold position," Seo Junho replied quietly. "Wait for the signal." What appeared to be old satellites were actually weapons platforms. Ancient-looking cargo ships carried hidden missile pods. Even the space junk floating near the planet's surface concealed deadly surprises. On Earth's surface, General Han Myung monitored the situation from the deep underground command center buried beneath the Rocky Mountains. The massive chamber was filled with hundreds of technicians and officers, all watching the tactical displays that showed the collective fleet's positions. "Ma'am," her aide reported, "all railgun platforms are charged and ready. Targeting solutions have been calculated and locked in." General Han looked at the screens showing the alien ships. They were positioned exactly where the computer models had predicted they would be, after months of studying collective tactics. In battle formations, humanity knew exactly how these creatures thought. "Kinetic kill vehicles are ready for launch," reported another officer. "All stealth ships are in position?" "Good," Han Myung said calmly. "Now we wait for them to make the first move." Above Earth's atmosphere, Velthar was growing impatient. The humans had been remarkably quiet since his main fleet arrived. Their representatives on the lunar base had seemed cooperative, even eager to discuss surrender terms. But something felt wrong. The planet below was too calm, too normal. "Sir," his aide said nervously, "the humans are still broadcasting their usual transmissions. Television, radio, internet traffic. They don't seem to be evacuating their cities or preparing for attack. Perhaps they're too primitive to understand what's happening," Velthor mused. "Or maybe they're in shock." His communications officer looked up from his console. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human delegation on Luna. They're asking for more time to prepare their surrender ceremony." Velthor's patience finally snapped. "Enough of this delay. These creatures need to understand our power. Prepare to demonstrate what happens to worlds that waste our time." On the lunar base, Colonel Choi Min-seok was playing his role perfectly. Dressed as a nervous diplomat, he spoke into the communication device with a trembling voice. "Please, Commander Velthor, we need just a few more hours. Our leaders want to make this official, with proper ceremonies. We don't want to anger you with a hasty surrender." But even as he spoke, Choi Min-seok was sending coded signals to Earth. The collective had taken the bait. Their ships were in perfect position, their weapons charging, their attention focused entirely on the planet below. "Sir," Velthar's weapons officer announced, "all ships report ready to fire, awaiting your command." Velthar walked to the center of his bridge, savoring the moment. Another world was about to fall to the collective's might. These humans would learn, just like all the others, that resistance was futile. "Target their major population centers," he commanded. "I want them to see what happens when they delay our conquest." The weapon ports along the collective ships began to glow with deadly energy. Plasma cannons charged to full power, ready to rain destruction on the world below. "All ships, prepare to fire on my command," Velthar announced across the fleet communication system in the underground command center. General Han Myung watched the energy readings spike across all enemy vessels. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. "Ma'am," her aide said urgently, "all collective ships are charging weapons. They're about to fire." Han Myung's finger hovered over the activation switch, and for months Earth's best minds had planned for this exact moment. Everything depended on perfect timing. "All units stand by," she said into her headset. "Prepare to execute storm protocol." Velthar raised his hand, his 6 eyes focused on the beautiful blue planet that would soon be a smoking ruin. Fire at will, the moment the first energy beam lanced toward Earth's surface. General Han Myung pressed the switch. "Execute storm protocol," she commanded. "Show them what Earth's children can do." The trap that had been months in the making finally sprang shut. The first thing that confused the collective was the strange metal objects launching from Earth's surface. The alien sensors detected dozens of long, thin rods accelerating upward at incredible speeds. To Commander Velthor and his crew, they looked like primitive missiles, slow, clumsy weapons that their energy shields would easily deflect. "Incoming projectiles," reported his weapons officer with amusement. "Shall we intercept them, sir?" Velthor almost laughed. After seeing the collective's mighty fleet, these humans were still trying to fight back with their crude technology. "Don't waste energy on those toys. Let our shields handle them." The tungsten rods continued climbing, gaining speed as they left Earth's atmosphere. What the aliens didn't understand was that these weren't normal missiles. Each rod weighed several Tonzin had been accelerated by massive electromagnetic railguns buried deep underground. By the time they reached space, they were traveling at 20% of light speed. The first rod struck the collective cruiser Dark Vengeance directly in its center. The alien energy shields, designed to deflect plasma beams and particle weapons, offered no protection against pure kinetic force. The rod punched through the ship's hull like a bullet through paper, vaporizing everything in its path. The Dark Vengeance exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. What in the void was that? Svelthar roared as his ship shuddered from the shockwave. Around him, his crew stared in disbelief at their tactical displays. "Sir," his sensor operator stammered, "the humans. They destroyed the Dark Vengeance with a single projectile." Before Velthor could respond, more impacts lit up the darkness of space. The primitive-looking rods were striking ship after ship, each impact creating devastating explosions. The collective's perfect formation began to break apart as captains tried desperately to avoid the incoming projectiles. "Emergency, evasive maneuvers," Velthor ordered. "All ships scatter." But the chaos was just beginning. As the collective fleet struggled to regroup, the space around Earth erupted with new threats. Objects that had appeared to be floating debris suddenly activated, revealing themselves as sleek human warships. The disguised vessels shed their camouflage like snakes shedding skin. Captain Seo Junho smiled grimly as his ship, the Silent Thunder, dropped its asteroid disguise. His crew had been waiting weeks for this moment, hidden among the space rocks. While the aliens positioned themselves perfectly for the trap. "All weapons online," he announced to his crew. "Show these invaders what happens when they threaten our home." The human fleet didn't fight like any enemy the collective had faced before. Instead of energy weapons, they unleashed swarms of kinetic projectiles, smart missiles that changed direction mid-flight, railgun slugs that punched through alien hulls, and proximity mines that exploded in deadly clouds of shrapnel. Admiral Park So-young's ship, the Harmony, suddenly transformed before the aliens' eyes. The innocent-looking cargo vessel split apart, revealing the heavily armed battleship Defiant Dawn hidden inside. Weapons ports opened along its hull, and missile tubes extended like deadly fingers. "Target their command ship," Park So-young ordered her crew. "Let's make this personal." The Defiant Dawn unleashed a barrage of kinetic missiles at the Sovereign's wrath. The collective flagship's shields flared as the projectiles struck, but the human weapons were designed specifically to overwhelm energy defenses through sheer numbers and impact force. Velthar's bridge filled with smoke and sparks as his ship bucked and rolled under the assault. Around him, his crew worked frantically to maintain their shields and return fire. "Impossible," he screamed over the noise of explosions. "They're primitives. How are they doing this?" His weapons officer looked up from his damaged console, his face pale with shock. "Sir, their weapons aren't energy-based. They're using pure kinetic force. Our shields were never designed for this type of attack." Throughout the battlefield, the same scene was playing out on dozens of collective ships. The aliens' energy shields, so effective against plasma cannons and particle beams, were useless against humanity's kinetic weapons. Worse, their battle formation, designed for energy weapon combat, left them vulnerable to the humans' unconventional tactics. "Lieutenant Kim," Du-Hyan's voice suddenly echoed across all communication frequencies, broadcast from the hidden command. "Center beneath Earth's surface. This is Earth's Defense Force. You came to our home, you threatened our families. You thought we were weak because we're different. Now face the consequences." The human fleet moved like a pack of wolves, using speed and coordination instead of brute force. Their ships were smaller than the collective's massive vessels, but they were faster, more maneuverable, and working together with deadly precision. Colonel Choi Min-suek, still on the lunar base, watched the battle through the facility's observation windows. The collective guards around him stood frozen in shock as their mighty fleet was torn apart by the supposedly primitive humans. "Your empire made one mistake," he said quietly to the alien commander beside him. "You thought technology was everything? You forgot about courage, determination, and the will to protect what you love." The battle that the collective had expected to last minutes stretched into hours. For the first time in over 3,000 years, the mighty Zephyrian collective found itself not just challenged, but losing ship after ship fell to humanity's unconventional weapons. The perfect formation that had conquered a galaxy was shattered by an enemy that refused to fight by the established rules. Velthar, his flagship burning and his fleet in ruins, finally understood the terrible truth. The humans weren't primitive at all, they were simply different. And in their difference lay a strength that the collective had never encountered before. Earth's children had unleashed their fury, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 hours after the battle began, the remaining collective ships limped away from Earth's solar system. What had once been a proud fleet of over 200 vessels was now reduced to barely 30 damaged ships fleeing in panic. The Sovereign's Wrath, Commander Velthar's flagship, was among the survivors, but just barely. The mighty warship's hull was cracked and burning. Half of its weapon systems were destroyed, and its energy shields flickered weakly. Velthar himself sat in restraints aboard the human battleship Rising Storm, his 6 arms bound and his multiple eyes staring in disbelief at the tactical displays showing the scope of his defeat. Admiral Lee Minho stood before the alien commander, his expression calm but firm. The human admiral was not tall or imposing like the aliens, but there was something in his quiet confidence that made Velthar feel small. "Your empire ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, Lee Minho said quietly. You conquered world after world because you believed that having better technology meant you were superior. But you made a critical mistake." "What mistake?" Velthar asked, his voice bitter with defeat. "You assumed that different meant primitive? You saw our kinetic weapons and chemical rockets and thought we were weak. You never considered that we might be strong in ways you couldn't understand." Lee Minho walked to the viewing window, looking out at the debris field that had once been the collective's invasion fleet. Intelligence, adaptability, and the willingness to fight for what you love. These things matter more than the strongest shields or the most powerful weapons. You. You deceived us, Velthar said, still struggling to understand how his superior forces had been defeated. "We survived," Lee Minho corrected. "We studied you, learned your weaknesses, and prepared for this day. Now, you're going to help us send a message to the galaxy." The message that followed reached every corner of known space within days. It wasn't transmitted through normal communication channels, but carried by the surviving collective ships as they spread word of their defeat. The psychological impact was devastating. The broadcast was simple and direct. "We are humanity. We come from a small blue world in the outer rim of the galaxy. We do not seek conquest or dominion over others. We wish only to live in peace with our neighbors. But to those who would threaten our home, our families, or our freedom, we offer this warning: underestimate Earth at your own peril." The reaction across the galaxy was immediate and profound. For 3 millennia, the collective had seemed invincible. News of their defeats spread faster than any fleet could travel, carried by traders, refugees, and communication networks. On the industrial world of Korath Prime, the enslaved Vekari workers heard the news and put down their tools. For the first time in centuries, they refused to work. The collective overseers threatened them with punishment. But the workers simply pointed to the sky and said, "The humans defeated you. We are no longer afraid." In the Theta sector, the aquatic Narathi species, who had been forced to provide resources to the collective for generations, declared their independence. When collective ships arrived to crush the rebellion, they found the Narathi had armed themselves with kinetic weapons copied from human designs. Dr. Yoon Ha-jin, now serving as Earth's first Xeno-diplomatic ambassador, welcomed the first peaceful alien visitors to Earth just 2 months after the battle. The delegation consisted of representatives from 6 different species who had broken free from collective control. "We wish to learn from you," said Ambassador Cathara, a tall, graceful being from the Solani species. "Not your technology, but your spirit. How did you find the courage to stand against an empire that had conquered thousands of worlds? Dr. Yoon smiled as she led the delegation through the halls of the newly constructed Galactic Relations Center. In Geneva, we didn't fight because we were brave. We fought because we had no choice. This is our home, and we would rather die defending it than live as slaves. The transformation of galactic politics happened surprisingly quickly. The collective's authority crumbled as world after world declared independence. Some species sought alliance with Earth, offering their knowledge and resources in exchange for protection. Others simply wanted to trade, to learn, to establish diplomatic relations with the small world that had changed everything. Not all the changes were peaceful. Some collective worlds chose to fight rather than give up their privileged positions. But they found themselves facing not just rebellious slaves, but human advisors who taught the rebels how to use kinetic weapons and unconventional tactics. Colonel Choi Min-seok, now promoted to general, established the first human military advisory corps. His teams traveled to dozens of worlds, teaching former collective subjects how to defend themselves using Earth's proven methods. "We're not trying to build an empire," he explained to his officers. "We're trying to make sure no one else can build one either. Every world that can defend itself is a world that can't be conquered." 6 months after the battle, Admiral Lee Min-ho stood in the same underground command center where the victory had been planned. The screens around him no longer showed defensive positions and weapon placements, but diplomatic communications and trade agreements. "Sir," his aide reported, "we've received formal recognition from 47 independent worlds. They're calling it the Free Worlds Alliance." Lee Min-ho nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. Earth had not sought to become the leader of a galactic coalition, but history had thrust that role upon them. The age of the collective was over. In its place rose something new, not another empire built on conquest and fear, but a coalition of free worlds united by the simple belief that every species had the right to determine its own destiny. Earth had rained fire upon its enemies, and in doing so, had lit a beacon of hope that would shine across the galaxy for generations to come.